everyone. Today we have our another new episode. You know that World Talent Economy Forum, we are organizing Nikola Tesla Technology Conference in Slovakia coming October. So this is the episodes we already collaborate with University Grant Commission for doing research on Nikola Tesla technology in Bangladesh. Besides that, World Bank and ADB, they are also supporting Nikola Tesla technology projects. Now I would like to give chance Mr. Rob to discuss about Nikola Tesla. Besides that, our major objective doing research and innovating new technologies, and especially we want to discuss on new startup procedures. So as you are from Silicon Valley, maybe our audience, those who are students, those who are developing startup, they have huge interest on that particular area. Mr. Rob.
Well, with regard to working with startups and new technology, it's often not what you know, but it's who you know that can get you through the different funding and staffing rounds that you need to go through to build a company. Often when it comes to a startup, they lack the breadth of experience that's needed to operate a company, the financial experience, if it's going to build something, the manufacturing experience. Even some of the engineering experience, because with regard to engineering, it's not just the hardware that needs to be engineered, but the software and vice versa. So you need to create a blend. For instance, one time I was consulting for Paul Allen, one of the founders of Microsoft, and he was bringing a new computer to market. And my comment was he had the wrong team, and of course the computer never made it to market. He had staffed his company with software people out of Microsoft, but he was building a new laptop computer. He had no hardware expertise on the team at all. And so the end result is while they had an idea about building a laptop you could put in your pocket, this was around the same time as the iPhone, and you could argue the iPhone was a kind of a computer you could put in your pocket. But the idea, he couldn't bring the idea to market because he had the wrong skill set. And this is a guy that was experienced and very wealthy. So being able to build the appropriate initial team is incredibly important, as is understanding the market dynamics. Another thing you need early on is really good competitive analysis. You need to know what you're competing with out there, and you need to recognize that sometimes it's hard to beat good enough. So for instance, if your idea is to replace or enhance something, but that something has been in place for a long time and people are happy with it, part of your task is going to be to make them unhappy with whatever it is that they're currently using, and for a small company, that's generally beyond scope. So there would be a project that probably wouldn't get funded because swimming against the current would simply be too difficult. So understanding the dynamic and then being able to build an adequate team with enough breadth to handle the day-to-day operations of the company is critical, as is understanding the competitive dynamics in the market that your product's going to flow into. Now, talking specifically about Tesla and Tesla technologies, one of the last things he really worked on was wireless power, and that would be something that would be incredibly beneficial today because we're having severe problems with batteries. And we just had here in the United States, we just had a repair shop for e-bikes go up in flames, and I think 3 or 4 people died in the process. And I've had an e-bike battery go up myself, and it nearly took out my house. And that's just an e-bike battery. When a car battery goes up, it's far more critical. In fact, the electric car I drive, the Jaguar I-Pace, it's under recall for the main battery, and they're recommending we charge the car outside. And we're due to get a software update that will restrict the car to 75% capacity, which can do an awfully lot of ugly things to range. But showcasing the weakness of the electric vehicle market and pretty much all of our wireless peripherals is that battery. If Tesla had been able to get wireless power to work, we wouldn't have those problems. And at least with regard to the safety of lithium-ion batteries, we wouldn't be dealing with that at the moment. So that's the technology that might if it could be brought to fruition. Right now, wireless electrical transport at range is typically, it's better than it was, but it's typically only good enough to sustain a smartphone. It won't even charge a smartphone at range. If you go to inductive charging, yeah, you can do a lot of things, including charge an electric car, but inductive charging requires you be within a couple inches of the charging source. So that means you'd have to put the coils in roads, and the cost of that, at least so far, has been so high as to be daunting. And I'm not aware of anything beyond trials where they're even going to attempt this. The other place to put them is in the floor of parking structures, because cities in particular, who would benefit tremendously from electric cars, are the worst for electric charging, because they just don't have enough charging stations, and the traffic of people going to and from the charging stations would be problematic. So you want to put the charging stations inside or around where the cars are being parked, and that's a lot of construction. We're looking at things like robotic chargers, robots that go around and charge the cars in charging stations, parking facilities. But that's a lot of complexity and a lot of upkeep for an industry that typically has very low staffing and is relatively low tech. So I'm not convinced that's going to work either. So wireless power distribution would have the biggest impact right now on some of the biggest problems we've got with regard to IoT, where it is being used a bit, and electric vehicles and electric computers and smartphones. So that's probably where the greatest gains could be made if we could figure it out. But clearly, it's not an easy task. But it showcases that Tesla was ahead of the curve with regard to anticipating the problem with energy storage, and his way to approach that problem was correct, even though his methodology didn't pan out. That's my opening. Pass over to David.
Rob, I agree with you so much on your assessment there, in that, as we've talked about before, during startups, and as you go to your MVP and then go into the marketplace, the skill set changes a lot. The type of people you need to do things changes, and that's one of the challenges we see. And as we've talked about Nikola Tesla in the past, he was a very good inventor. He did a reasonably good job of protecting his intellectual property, but where he failed was at that inflection point of trying to turn the invention into a product and into a company. And that is still one of the reasons we see many startups fail today, is they have identified a market need. They've produced a product they think will meet the market need, oftentimes without adequate feedback from future customers. But then they fail when they try to transition the company from an outright 100% development company into a product-based company. And that's one of the most difficult challenges I've seen in the startup environment, is how you make those transitions. And some of the very best people with starting startups are folks who love to invent, who love to innovate. And to them, running a sales and marketing and support organization is boring. And sometimes you need to understand that the different dynamics there, and how that can change. I know I hate to be on the sales circuit, and I'd much rather doing the things that I enjoy to do, like the innovation and working and solving problems. So you see that, and you just have to look and identify the transition points, identify a team. That is where the outside investment to help you go to market is so useful, because that you see investments on developing the product. But the more successful startups I've seen usually also bring in around, unless they have huge initial customers, will bring in a go-to-market round to really help cement their bringing the skills that a early stage startup doesn't have to be successful in that marketplace. And if you go back and look at Nikola Tesla, the technology which Rob talked about, the wireless energy transmission, is one that is getting better today. Rob, some of the startups around here in Texas, at least, are doing some reasonably good job at transmitting power over long distance. But the challenge you really have is also on the receiver side. of building it. And the difficulty of building the type of technology they're using based on Tesla's original design principle would be very difficult to put in a battery pack underneath a car. And so that last part of the equation with wireless power is still one, Sharif, where a lot of development work needs to be done, a lot of invention needs to be done, and is suitable for the type of questions you usually ask: what can be done in a college university? What can be done by entrepreneurs? And that receiver side is difficult. Just north of Dallas is a large uh, Tesla coil out in a field that is being used to test and provide some of the wireless power. It's very interesting in the middle of this farm country to see a lot of high voltage lines terminated in a little building next to this tower. And then a smaller tower set off probably a quarter mile from it to help steer the wireless power generated by the Tesla coil there. And it still is a work in progress. I see promise of what they've done. Rob, they've actually transmitted power from Texas to Costa Rica and received it there. So it's one of the more successful tests I've seen at distance. But that's one thing to develop power that can be then redistributed there. But I agree with your comments that beginning to take and convert that power to something that could be used with electric vehicles, and particularly electric trucks and electric delivery vehicles, as well as cars, is one that would have great application of the Tesla technologies today, and one which I believe could be really enhanced. The other place, Rob, is, Tesla. One of Tesla's early inventions was the radio control boat, kind of the precursors to our aerial drones and the boat drones we see today. And the same type of things. One of the limiting factors we see in a lot of our drones today is the battery power that they can hold on board. And the same type of wireless energy transmission that we've been talking about today would be a boon for the drone industry, and would probably help us create larger drones that could have more utility applications, such as delivering more healthcare, more commodities, more retail support, and actually be used probably more effectively in some of the other roles we see drones being used in today, of all types. Because we need to remember, we have flying drones, we have drones on the land, we have drones in the water, and all of them have to be powered. And this type of Tesla's approaches to wireless energy would be a great way to begin to further enhance that marketplace that is just exploding today. And the compound annual growth in that market is extremely high. And I think it will continue to climb, just using the analogies of how we're seeing drones being applied in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and how that has become one of the dominant warfighting tools now, and surveillance tools. And even drones they're trying to use to provide persistent ISR. I'm sorry, loitering drones that can stay in the air and see what's underneath and sense what's underneath. Again, a wireless energy source to power those would be fantastic, particularly it's one that cannot be blocked by electronic warfare tools. So, Sharif, I think that's my first reaction to what we're talking about so far today. And again, we have talked about Nikola Tesla and his impact and his genius, and understand that it is many of his stuff is applicable today. And recently, some more of his papers were just released, and people are beginning to go through those and make new discoveries that can lead to new products and expanding upon those innovations today. So that's my initial comments.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. Mr. Rob, like Nikola Tesla, major innovations in energy sectors. Right now, we have a lot of challenges for energy, especially for this Russia and Ukraine war, and we have money inflation. So, do you believe this kind of innovations can applicable around the world? And if it's applicable, how we can get help from developed nation for apply these new innovations, especially in energy sector?
Well, certainly any form of wireless power gets around one of the two major problems with electrical energy. One is transport, the other is storage. And effectively gets rid of both. Because if you can transmit to the item, you don't need to store it, and if you're transporting wirelessly, you don't have to build a wired ecosystem, which is problematic in a war zone because I expect much of the ecosystem, much of the infrastructure is wiped out during conflict in Ukraine, and so in terms of rebuilding, if they could rebuild or at least avoid having to pull new electrical wire. And certainly avoid having to trench and put it underground, which would be recommended for that particular area. And given the potential future hostilities, it would probably be a better approach than above ground. They could save a tremendous amount of money, but in terms of getting the Western world, getting mature businesses excited about an emerging economy doing something like this, you need a proof of concept. You would tend to have to do a lot of this in country first and showcase it worked, showcased it was reliable, and showcased it was beneficial. Now, another way to do it, of course, and using Ukraine as an opportunity, would be one of the entities that goes into Ukraine and helps them rebuild, again, using it as an example for what you could do for others. But that would be more of a philanthropic effort because Ukraine isn't exactly going to have unlimited funds. So it would need to be a shared funding opportunity if that were to happen. But in a way, you can't really make money unless you invest money. And part of what you need to do, David, could you do me a favor and mute your line? There's some stuff coming across your microphone that's kind of disruptive. Thank you. At least I'm assuming it's you. Okay, I don't hear it anymore. Okay, another thing I want to bring up, though, and particularly when we're talking about wireless power or safety, we just had an event at the Titanic site where a submarine went down, and a bunch of people died, it's pretty clear now the reason those people died is because the sub was unsafe, and the people that were doing it decided to bypass any certifications, any testing, in order to get their product and service into market. And that's not uncommon, but as this particular event demonstrates, it's incredibly foolish because you cannot assess a risk you don't understand. And this is one of a couple times I've seen this happen. Back in the 70s, there was a company that wanted to build a flying car. They used a Pinto as the car, which I'm still not quite over. And they strapped it to a part of a Cessna, and the car and the Cessna separated at altitude, and in the car at that time were the top executives of the firm and an end of the company. Again, not focused enough on safety, focused way too much on bringing the product to market rapidly, and that can end catastrophically. It did here with the submarine. It did previously with the car. And here's a case where you just do need to build up trust and let people understand that not only is the technology capable, but it's safe, and it has been rigorously tested for safety, and then make sure that that's not fake. Because the other thing I run into over time is when people are given a requirement with regard to safety and compliance, they will fake the records in order to get the product to market more quickly, and that really blows up. One of the worst, less regard to safety and more with regard to repercussions, was Volkswagen and their diesel engine efforts, where they covered up the problems with the diesel engines and overstated their cleanliness efforts with regard to restricting the pollutants, and then they got caught. And the end result is they don't make diesel engines anymore. They've had to pay for almost the entire non-Tesla U.S. charging ecosystem hundreds of millions of dollars, and they've had huge penalties in Europe as well. They survived it as a large company, although a lot of the executives did not. And the end result is the Volkswagen brand was forever tarnished. On a small company, that would have been fatal. So understanding that not only do you have to deliver a service, but you have to assure that it is safe, because any major problem that showcases that you were not safe, or particularly showcased that you covered up the lack of safety, is going to land you in a lot of hot water, might land you in prison, and the examples I gave might land you in your grave. So it's critical that you not only build the company properly, but you build in ethics, and you make sure that you report what the product can and can't do relatively accurately. And particularly when it comes to a safety concern, you make sure it's mitigated. And for God's sake, if you find people covering stuff like that up, get the hell out of the company, because it's going to end badly. Now I've got to run to my next meeting. I'll leave it to David to carry on, and hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. Yeah.
But once again, Rob is correct as he was putting part of the comments there in safety and taking shortcuts are sometimes one of the artifacts of startups. And you saw that actually with Nikola Tesla as well, with the explosion he had in his home laboratory and the fire he had in New York Central Park, as he was testing one of his inventions, and the fact that his electronic magnifier actually caused a small earthquake in New York, and the buildings were shaking and stuff, and the police came and investigated it. So that type of concerns are one that you have to take precautions of and be respectful of. And you see the impacts of his technology, and he really wanted to see if this could be used over a distance. One of his use cases is he discussed the invention with some of the press back then, is he wanted to use it to power trains. He wanted to use it to power airplanes, and begin to push it. He started construction on one of his he called them the Tower of Power in 1904 right off of Long Island, and it was it was built 187 feet tall, and the dome on top, it was actually 68 feet in diameter. And that was what he was using to transmit. And he wanted to hook that one up to one of the hydroelectric generators, which he helped invent and deploy too. And he wanted to put 30 million horsepower of water used to power that one dome. But unfortunately, there was not that much water flow, and the efficiency of the devices to be able to effectively power it completely. And he had said that perhaps the most valuable application of wireless energy would be the propulsion of airplanes, which would carry no fuel and would be free of the limitations of the current airplanes, and at that time dirigibles as well. And that it would make it clean, and he said it would be effectively a tool to actually work on the harmonizing of international interests. So he saw the political side of it too, being there. And one of his inventions back then is kind of what we see today in some still our science fiction, of the flying cars. And his wireless energy was a real part of his trying to project the flying cars as a solution into the future as well, where you get away of the infrastructure build and requirements of roads, and with wireless energy. That dream of his, that invention type of his, becomes more usable today as we look forward and what it can do and be applied. Um, but Nikola Tesla just had so many great ideas that if they had all been implemented, uh, it would have been fantastic to see where we are today. But again, part of his problem is he tended to want to do all his work alone, and so he was not really collaborative. And the ability to collaborate is one of the things that we see as one of the best practices and success signs today as we work on it. And even though Nikola Tesla held nearly 300 patents, uh, he did little to commercialize those patents. He did little to put them out in the marketplace and uh, spread them to the masses. And that's one of the things that you have to do today is not just come up with good ideas, but you actually need to come up with ways to commercialize it, to build companies, to create an industry if there's not an industry in place, uh, and, and begin to apply that. Uh, One of the other really neat inventions he had was the Tesla valve. And it's one of his lesser known inventions, but it's a microfluid valve uh, for developing and moving things through in directions and controlling direction flow. So it has none of the mechanical mechanisms of the conventional check valves. And there is a lot of research actually being done today in going back and seeing how this can be applied today. That it's one of the still big problems in the mechanical engineering side of turning valves on and off, of not creating disruption, and how the mechanical parts really uh, run out. Uh, and you know, there's actually uh, the Tesla Corporation is actually looking at this Nikola Tesla invention to see if it could be used in the SpaceX rocket engines uh, as a way to make them more dependable, to make them less susceptible in the fuel control to the vibrations which you see in any rocket engine and as it's being applied. So his technologies are being re-examined today, looking at new ways to work with current technologies and being used. Can they create some future technology that can have an impact like that? So Sharif, um, his inventions and the potential for his inventions are living on well after his death. 70, 78 years ago. So other questions on this, Sharif, you
Yeah.
want me to comment?
Uh, when we discuss about Nikola Tesla, as he is a scientist from Europe, Central Europe, Serbia, then he
Hmm.
moved to USA. So, what you what do you think about USA culture, about science and innovation collaboration, or how they support different scientists and yeah.
Uh, the the culture of innovation varies across the United States, but it does have a very fantastic uh, view of innovation today. If I look globally, though, and if I look historically, this type of innovation has over the millennial uh, been active in parts of the world, then for some reason, cultural, most likely political, it's been less in areas and it's moved to other parts of the world. I mean, if you go back and look in Asia, Asia for decades, hundreds of years ago, had well, 1,000 years ago, had a really innovative culture. Then it began to move more to the West. Um, and then there was a renaissance in Europe and in Greece and areas there of innovation. Then that began to move west. And you see this ebb and flow. And what is interesting to me today is that uh, one of the reasons I think you saw those is that there was not a global way to communicate them. There was not a global way to work together at a distance in real time. And that problem has gone away today. We can, in real time, as we're doing with this program, communicate anywhere in the world. And we can uh, we can communicate anywhere in the world in real time, not just hearing, not just seeing, but we can share data, we can share results, we can control each other and the technologies we're using. And we now have AI tools and language tools and others so that language is less of a barrier than it has ever been at any time in history. Um, and so this type of innovation, I think, is there. Uh, Nikola Tesla came to the United States around the turn of the century and was at a time of great invention in the United States. Uh, and it was a time of when there were large scale projects that needed to have solutions put in place to solve them. So his timing of coming here was very fortunate at the time. But but as each of these invention periods around the globe in the past have started, flourished, and then fell off, we're going to see more of that, but we're going to see it more harmonized today because, like I said, of our digitalization and the fact that we have so many tools to lower the barriers globally to working collaboratively together and using group intelligence and using the native capabilities of each of the regions to solve problems, not only in one industry, but taking the same approach and solving problems in multi-industry at all together and pulling best practices from each of those vertical industries into other industries that are not the same. Because oftentimes with small changes, a solution that was developed for one industry can have a large impact in another industry. So those are some of the changes I think we see going through the system today, Dr. Sharif.
Okay. We are actually doing research on Nikola Tesla. So we try to inspire a lot of scientists, a lot of researchers, a lot of startup development. So what is your advice? What area we should focus to inspire the emerging economy? Because he has more than 307 innovations. Uh, what is the demanding in terms of developed nations project he has?
Well, we've talked about several of those today. The new use and importance of drones, particularly drones enhanced by artificial intelligence tools, enhanced by machine vision and others. That's an area that a lot of innovation, particularly product innovation, needs to happen. And again, it can be driven by some of the unique needs in different parts of the developing world. Um, the first week in July, I am going to be on a trip, and it's interesting. They're actually saying you can bring your small drone, and they gave a size on it to use as part of this trip to allow you to document part of the trip. And to me, that's just a new type of experience. And the technology's there, but it shows to me there's just so many applications and so many advancements that we still need to make in this area that is ripe for the type of innovations you're discussing. Rob and I both spent a fair amount of time in the program talking about wireless energy transmission. That is still one of the products that has so many applications in so many industries. And some of them might be unique applications that can be well served by startups and others focusing on the application and further developing the technology to support the application. So a lot of the innovation you're talking about, Sharif, in those areas are innovation that can be done using incremental and some distinctive type of development. There does not have to be a breakthrough and disruptive innovation to meet the needs of the innovations that you're talking about, Sharif. But it's really taking the base technology, morphing it to meet the unique needs of the application set and the geographical areas with which they are trying to meet the needs as a startup. And I think that's going to be very, very important.
Thank you. Mr. Dan, we are discussing about Nikola Tesla and especially his innovation, how it can solve the social problem. So, what is your thought about Nikola Tesla innovation?
Yeah, thanks for another important show about an important inventor. The thing that strikes me maybe most about Tesla is his ethics of decentralization versus centralization. His idea of off grid or grid free access. And I think this was probably informed by, he'd had this experience of running up against big centralized authorities and not having success with being an independent spirit and inventor. And so I really think his wireless power vision, that anyone could access something for free at any point. Well, it's a lot like, here we go again with a plug, amateur radio, which I think is the world's best hobby. Tesla would probably be an amateur radio operator if he were still around. In fact, he did finally get the patent for radio rightfully restored to him instead of Marconi, because I think Marconi used like 13 of his principles in his radio patent. So the great thing about grid-free anything is that you don't have single points of failure. And this is something that designers that work on safety issues know, that every part in a system you have to multiply to come up with a likelihood of something failing. We had a tragic news story recently with the loss of the 5 people in the Titan submersible. But this is an example of not just complexity multiplication, but also a cascade failure. You had a whole chain of little failures that led up to this loss of life, and that's usually what happens in instances of catastrophic problems. But one way to minimize this cascade failure or this catastrophic failure is to go with grid-free systems, with decentralized systems, and that's exactly the philosophy of most of Tesla's work, including his wireless power transmission ideas. So we can learn a lot from a guy like Tesla's ethos. His design ethos was that of independence and grid freedom and resilience, and these are all embodied in the amateur radio hobby. It's more than just a hobby. It's kind of a backbone of civilization, if you ask me. You look at our cell phone. People go, why do I need a ham radio? I've got the cell phone. Well, people don't realize that the cell phone system can easily become overloaded and just shut down. If too many people try to make a call at the same time, the system will not respond. And this is not true of most open source things like amateur radio. In fact, on a well-designed thing, the more users you have in the system, the higher the bandwidth goes and the better the quality goes and the more resilient it becomes. This is a feature of decentralized systems versus overly centralized systems. So that's my initial main takeaway from Tesla and his design style. And this week is the annual. This weekend is the last full weekend in June, and this is when amateur radio people go off and do contesting out in the field. It's called Field Day. They don't run on shore power; they run on battery power. And we've got a local club here that's going to be camping out overnight on a piece of property in Westlake Village called Dickens Field and having a barbecue. And the great thing about these contests that amateur radio does once a year, well, they kind of do it all the time, but you don't just get points for how many contacts you made, but you get points for teaching people. If someone comes up from the media and you talk to them, there's a scoring system for that. If you help someone make a contact and educate them about the hobby, there's points for that. So I think it's really a great voluntary version of a social credit system that's not imposed by a government. It's kind of a grassroots social credit system idea that I think Tesla would also have approved of. So yeah, this is KK6 VDR, Thousand Oaks extra class. I'll be clear. I'll be monitoring. I'll be standing by. Not clear. Is the frequency in use?
Okay. Mr. David Smith, we see that scientists and startup, there are major challenges to bringing finance for their project. Nikola Tesla also has same challenge.
Same
So
challenge.
I think he is not so careful about financing and everything. So in that situation, how we can involve with like different financial source and bring finance for science, innovation, doing research, develop startup.
Well, Sharif, the challenge of financing goes back uh, hundreds and hundreds of years, even before Nikola Tesla had this challenge with finances. If you go back, for example, and look in ancient Greece and at the artisans, at the inventors, at the philosophers and the scientists of those times, they had the same type of challenges of securing money to support their projects, to securing money to support their innovation or their art or the other things they were trying to do. And so it goes to what we were saying before. It's how you can create the environment, how you can find the right mentors, how you can establish the relationships to help you attract the funding and attract the team to attract the funding. One of the best practices I have learned is that when you're seeking funding, your team is important. It's not just the idea you have. It's not just the innovation you have. It's the team and the team's ability to develop it and deploy it and to make it successful. And that was kind of what was missing with Nikola Tesla is he was more of a loner and came up with great ideas. Actually did a kind of an okay job of protecting part of his innovation. But just like Daniel said, part of them were taken away, then they've been restored, and the challenges are still happening to some of his inventions through this day. But those relationships are so important in securing funding for anything. Also, our sources of funding have increased dramatically today. We have NGOs funding innovation. We have governments funding innovation. We have corporations with innovation operations within the companies, funding innovation. Yes, your friends and family and fools are a group that funds innovation as well too. But our opportunities for it today is so much greater than even 30 years ago, that if you can pull the right innovation, meet the right customer care abouts, and establish uh, a world-class team, the money will come. And it's just you have to establish all those together, and the relationships based around your team are truly, in funding today, one of the most important factors. Daniel?
Yeah,
Mr. Daniel, what you
that's
want
a
to
great point.
discuss? Yeah.
Yeah, I would second what David said, because ideas are a dime a dozen, like they say. They're in the ether, but your ability to execute on an idea is going to involve your team, and indeed, that's what venture capitalists want to see. Is what is your team? What is their track record? Like Sharif, you're doing a show called The Talent Economy, and I think we're just on the frontier of a greater talent economy. Um, which I think can be built in this kind of decentralized, grid-free method. I've talked before about the Dunbar number, which is about the 150 people that the average person can form close bonds with in their life, close, trusted relationships. And I don't think we have a talent economy based on that Dunbar number. We're getting there. We have the tools to get there, but we could upscale civilization by actually implementing those tools. I think again, amateur radio is a great way because you create these friendships with people all around the world, and then we have the geolocation science. That's GIS. You may be familiar. It's a way to add layers of information. The best way to talk about GIS is maybe when you use Google Maps. You can use the street view, you can use the satellite view, you can use all kinds of different views. Population, demographics, weather. There's all these different location layers that can be added, and I think that's something with the campaign that I want to do. Being the vice presidential candidate in 2024 with the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and Tom Ross is the presidential candidate. I think the U.S. Transhumanist Party and anyone who wants to improve the lot of humanity through technology, which is really the only thing that transhumanism means. It's about improving the quality of life with technology. GIS and this location informed information layering is going to be huge, and it's not being used enough. But combining that with your neighborhood and your Dunbar tribe, as I call it, so the 150 or so people that are going to come to your funeral is one way to look at it. When you're gone, the people who will continue to say nice things about you or just talk about you, period, when you're gone. Those are the people that you want to work harder to interact with, and to use things like this location information system, this geo information system. There's now CRM, which is kind of the human side of GIS. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, and if you're a nonprofit, Constituent Relationship Management, if you're a politician or a nonprofit, as in my case. So combining the CRM and the GIS with off-grid or grid-free communications like amateur radio, I think this is the secret sauce for upscaling civilization. And it's what I'm going to be really promoting in this campaign over the next months between now and November 5th, 2024. So this is KK6VDR monitoring.
Mr. David Smith, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, you're making me go back and remember my call sign from decades and decades and decades ago. See, what was it? KDL 9565 or something like that. anyways, Nikola Tesla is an inspiration, an inspiration that we can see. The fact that his inventions cross so many different industry vertical lines, I think, is a testament to his vision, but also is a testament to him understanding the role of system dynamics. And I believe he was an early practitioner of what has become known as system dynamics today. And very important. If I am a startup and beginning my journey and beginning to look at problems that I want to solve, it might be good to just do a scan, and they're easily accessible online now, of some of his inventions, of some of his patents that can be used today and be applied to solving your problems. Also, you should take advantage of the lessons learned from him, that where his failures were, and those were commercialization, the failures of him establishing the broader relationships. He was known as a loner, and that commercialization is important. And it's not just the invention. It's you have to get it into the marketplace, and you have to create a company that can sustain it, support it, and grow it. Those to me are some of the most important lessons that I have learned from looking at Nikola Tesla. And Sharif, once again, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your wonderful programs. And I
Thank
really
you.
thank you.
Thank you for your continuous support. Mr. Daniel, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, I think the other thing Nikola Tesla would have really embraced if he were alive would be the so-called open source movement. And open source is the idea of, in a program, the code that the program is made of can either be proprietary or closed source, which means you will get in trouble if you try to share it or copy it or modify it. Bad, lawsuits. But there's a huge community of open source people, and they embrace the idea that neighbors should help neighbors make things better, and information wants to be free, and that you should be able to improve something and learn about it and share it and copy it. So this open source idea can be applied not just to software code, but really to how we live our lives. And I think Tesla was, he did file patents, but he also wanted his technologies to be widely shared. And I'm sure as an inventor, he wanted them to be improved by other inventors. And he would have, and we've had other great minds like Ben Franklin, that most of his inventions were open source. The lightning rod, this is something that's going to save lives, because the lightning doesn't set the building on fire. It hits the metal thing and goes straight into the ground. Lives saves, buildings saved. So yeah, why would you make a lightning rod, a royalty closed source kind of item? That would just be an inhumane act. I think we are children of a divine, mysterious, loving creation, and we should emulate that by sharing knowledge and sharing our greater creativity. And that's really what makes life exciting and important and worthwhile. Most people, when they're experiencing their final moments on the deathbed, they don't say, "Oh, I wish I had spent more time or at the office working on those spreadsheets." And they want to have spent more time with the people close to them, and with playing and discovering. And we are curious creatures as humans, and that's the better angels of our nature. Abraham Lincoln had a great quote. He said, the philosophy of the schoolroom becomes the policies of the government in the next generation. So all the time we are mentoring the future if we share information and we share open source and we share creativity and play. That's to me is our highest occupation on Earth. And Tesla, in so many ways, was an exponent of this, and I'm glad that you are doing a lot of shows on him, and you're having a conference about him. That's very important to keep his spirit alive. So thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Daniel, and thank you, Mr. David Smith. Not only we are organizing this Nikola Tesla, we convince university grant commissions, we convince World Bank, we are convincing Asian development banks. So they are also supporting this Nikola Tesla. It's very hard, but at last, with the help of Allah, we made it. So definitely, we need more support for this kind of innovations. World Talent Economy Forum fully focus on talent economy. We fully focus on research and innovations and startup developments. This is our objective. This is our aim, and hopefully, through this process, we can bring maximum success for global economy, and that is the target of talent economy. And definitely we are advocating for AI and humans. When we work together, definitely bring more success. So thank you, Mr. Daniels, thank you, Mr. David Smith, for your continuous support. I request all of our audience, please share our content with the government agency, corporation, and academy. Your support can bring more collaborations, and through this process, we can uplift more emerging economy communities. So thank you. I'm sure how our speakers, our thinkers, they are contributing through World Talent Economy Forum. Their contribution actually priceless, and regularly they join and they are supporting our projects. And definitely, history gonna remember all of your initiative. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.